Welcome back, everybody, to Real Talk Realty Podcast, where we put the real in real estate. You are with your host, JD.
And Gabby.
And Louis Namick.
And we are super excited to have you guys here today with us, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about a few things. But the spring market is in full effect right now, and we're all kind of feeling it. Our phones are ringing. Got people coming out of the woodwork that we haven't heard from in a long time, and that's really what I wanted to chat with you guys about today. Start off kind of with this seller that I had last year that I met with, and they had a very unique house, very beautiful, over in the Gambrel Parks area here in Frederick County. And they didn't sell last year. They weren't quite where they wanted to be as far as what their home was actually going to sell for. They wanted it to be at least $1 million for them to make sense to actually get the property on the market. And it's been about 8 or 9 months since, I had rechecked or redone a CMA, which is a comparable market analysis for them. So we checked it out, and sure enough, over the last 9 months, there's been some new sales that took place, and some of these properties were located nearby and in turn increased their value for their homes. So I sent them over a new report, and we were right at between about $1 million and 1.1, which is where they wanted to be. So now they're getting excited, but that leads us kind of into our next conversation, which is just, for these people that maybe didn't pull the trigger a year or so ago for whatever reason, now may be a great time to look back in and reach back out to your realtor or us and have us put together a new CMA for you to see where you line up. Because, you never know. Somebody could have sold in your neighborhood over the last couple months, or one or two people maybe sold, and that has improved your value to the point where now it might start to make sense for you to take that leap if there was you wanting to downsize or potentially upsize, whatever your situation may be. But today we're going to talk about CMAs and kind of what we do to put them together and why we do them. And then we're going to talk a little bit about appraisals and things of that nature, and kind of shed a little bit of light of what goes on in behind the scenes when we're coming up with your home's value. So
it's very important to do a comparative market analysis, because you're right. Things can change, not in a year. It could change in 5 months, 6 months. 2 of the townhomes that sold in my neighborhood recently were priced a little higher than usual, and they sold. One of them sold for $10,000 over asking. So that's changed the pricing in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And someone who's been looking, like you said, to sell but have not pulled the trigger, with a new CMA in hand, they may just do that.
Yeah. And I've actually seen where the value can change in the middle of a transaction. Let's say that you have your house or one of your clients under contract or a seller under contract. And, let's say 2 weeks later, somebody else in the neighborhood gets their property under contract and they close 2 weeks before you. Right. Or 2 weeks before your appraiser goes out to look at your house. And in the middle of the transaction, your value can change. So a little bit about what we do in the name of the game is of coming up with CMA is to get as close to what we think that the property's actually going to appraise for, because at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 people that are buying a home are going to be using some sort of financing. And what that means for you as the seller is that we could sell your house for, $1 million, right? At the end of the day, it's still going to be subject to an appraisal. So when we are putting together our CMAs or our comparable market analysis, we are looking at several factors across the board. And most of them are some similar factors that an appraiser is going to be using to make sure that the bank is lending an appropriate amount of money for this person in order for them to close on this property. So one of the things that we're looking at is obviously how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. We're looking at above grade finished square footage.
Right.
And
so you're absolutely right. I think the 2 most important things that appraisers look at and realtors should look at are the square footage of the home, right? And the acreage.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 top things.
Yep.
And then you go into your
Yep.
All your upgrades. Upgrades do add value to a house.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Nick, the upgrades could be something simple as, redoing your kitchen. It could be something as simple as doing a back porch or a deck. Decks will add value to your property, especially if you're in a townhouse community and everybody in the community has a deck and yours doesn't,
Right.
it could affect.
Or your house could have a golf course view.
Yeah.
That will definitely add value to your
The
house.
views are interesting. They definitely can change things, especially like we talked about today in our meeting. In some areas here in Frederick and Urbana specifically, if you are in Urbana and your backyard lines up next to some woods and you don't have a perfect view of your other neighbor right there, that could be upwards of $20K in value. It's kind of just similar to if you're looking at some of these new construction neighborhoods where they have lot premiums, and the lot premiums are usually based off of the view of the backyard and how it's situated in the community. If you have a larger lot, or if maybe your lot's more private because there's more trees and things of that nature, that could definitely add some value to it.
For sure. And it's important to know for all the people who are going to be selling a house. We said it before on our podcast, right? The most important thing that you need to do in order to sell your house is price it correctly.
Right.
You can't underprice it. You can't overprice it.
Right.
So that's why you hire a realtor to do the work.
Yep.
And one of our jobs is to price it correctly, and we do a comparative market analysis using comparables of sold, under contract, closed homes in your specific area.
Yep.
I think one of the big important things to know as sellers, because we do get a lot of sellers who are like, I want to price it at this. This is the price that I want. This is what I believe my house is worth, right? And you can go back and forth with them, but at the end of the day, you brought up appraisals. It's important to know how appraisals work, because we can say, okay, fine, you think your house is worth $1 million, let's list it at $1 million. Let's just say for whatever reason you get an offer for $1 million, but then the appraisal comes back at $900,000. Well, you're not getting the $1 million unless it's a cash offer, or that buyer is willing to pay you cash, that $100K difference, which chances are you're not going to find, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's a really hot property.
Yeah, but it's important for people to know that, because although you think your house may be worth that much, if the appraisal comes back, you're not going to get it regardless. Unless it's a hot property where you have 20 offers, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right? We've all had clients that have told us their house is worth this much.
Yep.
We've given them a comparative market analysis with scientific data, and we give them our advice, and they just decide to overprice their house.
Right.
Yeah.
Then they find themselves in a spiral downward.
Well, then you're negotiating against yourself,
Yeah.
and you're basically chasing the window down. So you're doing price reductions, where, if you would have just, like you said earlier, I mean, I always say this to sellers: the danger of overpricing your house is far greater than the danger of underpricing it.
Absolutely.
If you underprice it, at least you're going to get more bodies through the door, more numbers, more showings, and you can push that price back up in a multiple offer situation. But by overpricing it, if there's a good agent out there and they're a good buyer's agent, before they even go out to the property, they're already checking to see if it's reasonably priced, because when their buyers ask them, what do you think about the price?
And they will ask you.
And they will ask, and you want to have the, real data there. And I know for a fact that I've gone, if I'm going to show a listing and it's been on the market for 14 or 20 days or so, before I even step foot on, I'm like, why is this on the market for 14 or 21 days in a neighborhood where houses go under contract in 7 days?
That is where that bad part comes in.
Yeah.
Because we know that the reason that we have to lower the price because it's overpriced.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if people start seeing that the price is being lowered on that house 1, 2, 3 times, they're not going to think about overpricing. They're going to think there could be something wrong
Yeah.
Right.
with this house.
That's true.
And
Yep.
then it goes silent.
Yep.
Yeah.
You won't get any buyers coming in to take a look at your house.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game. The first thing I do, somebody gives me an address of a property and I'm putting together the value. I'm going into that neighborhood. I'm going to look at everything that's taken place, whether it be under contract. I want to look at if there was a listing that was active, but then at some point was removed from the market, or let's say maybe it expired or was canceled by this seller. And that matters to me too, because if I see a property that's very similar to yours and it was listed at a specific price, price and, 2 months, 3 months, it sat on the market and expired, that tells me right there that price does not work. And so that's just as valuable data to me as, a sold, or let's say an actual property that has already closed. Because I'm going to look at all of it. I'm also going to look at what's active in the neighborhood. If you're saying that your house is worth, there's a neighborhood over in Hagerstown right now that Rob and I both had 2 listings at the same exact time, and mine was under contract before his, and mine played a role in his. We were each other's competition. So, you're actually looking at that and saying, okay, well, we've had 8 people through this listing, and we've had, 2 people through this other listing. Well, maybe the one that's only had 2 people come through it is maybe overpriced. Or
that's happening right now on one of my listings. So we have 2 identical townhouses. They're both end units, right? Their client was priced at $600. We priced ours at $610. We're under contract. They're still.
Oh, they're at $610?
No, they're. I'm thinking he called me the other day and said, "Hey, what did you sell for?" And now he's going to adjust his price for his client.
For sure.
So that's how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll pull up the neighborhood and I'll look and see what's going on in this neighborhood. And generally speaking, just so you guys know, an appraiser is going to be looking at the last 6 months in sales. Yeah. So we don't, unless we're in a very unique area where there's not a ton of comparable sales to base everything off of, you generally want to keep the data about 6 months old, because at that point in time, there's obviously could have been a change in the market from 6 months ago to now. So we want to make sure that we're getting the most recent data, and we're also making sure that these homes are as comparable as possible. So giving a range of, let's say, if it's 1,800 above grade finished square footage, we don't want to be comparing an 1,800 square foot house to a 2,500 square foot house unless we absolutely have to, in which case what we'll do is we'll make adjustments. And so depending on the county or the area and the price range that you're in, we have a formula that we use that gives us a number that we need to look at as far as making adjustments for additional square footage. So we would be then subtracting it from the subject property to make sure that we're looking at all, options.
An example of that would be, let's say that your house that you want to sell has 4 bedrooms and another house has 5 bedrooms. We adjust for bedrooms.
Yeah.
$5,000 for a bedroom or $10,000 for a bedroom, depending on
the price range.
The price range of the house. $10,000 for a garage.
Yep.
And so, all the different, and we make those adjustments to make sure that we're in the right price range.
Yep.
And I think it's important for sellers, when you see your agent, sending you those CMAs, to make sure you're reviewing it thoroughly, because I've had people, that they'll say, "Oh, well, that house sold for $600,000. Why are you saying my house is only worth $400,000?" Well, you don't have a finished basement. They do. They're an end unit. They have more land. So it's like, just because you see a home in your neighborhood that sold for way more than what we're saying is not that we're off. It's, you don't even, unless you've been in that person's house, right? You don't really know how it compares to yours. But with the CMAs that we give you, it tells you exactly the square footage, how many beds, how many bath, all the features that it has. And
that's where a CMA is so important, because you have concrete scientific data. You can put it in front of your client and answer the questions. Here, this house sold for this because this house has this. It's scientific data they can look at.
Yeah.
It's not you.
It's not an opinion based.
It's not an opinion based.
And that's the thing I think that sellers need to understand. It's not an opinion market. Like everything is based off of the data that we have. It's just like when you go to trade in your car, right? They don't just spit a number because you say my car is worth $10,000. Like they are looking for comparables that are similar to your vehicle. In this case, we're looking for comparables similar to your house.
Correct.
And that's why on appointments, I like to bring my iPad with me, because I've been on several appointments where, the seller will say, well, John down the road sold his house for $550,000. And I'll say, but did you see John's kitchen? And then I'll have already seen it, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's better for them to see the visual representation of what's going on. So I'll say, well, let's pull it up. And then I'll pull up John's house and I'll say, see his bathroom here in his primary bedroom. It's humongous. It's got an upgraded shower. It's got all these things. And look at the kitchen. He completely redid it, whereas your kitchen is still original. Yeah. And so sometimes you have to take the emotion out of it and let's just look at the facts, right? And that's what we were talking about a lot today.
And sometimes it's hard for people to swallow, but it's a fact, and we're just here to help them.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? If you want to sell your house at the price that John sold his, then we're showing you what adjustments you can make at your house.
Right.
Paint the house.
Yeah.
Put in new appliances. Make it worth what you want to sell the house for.
Yeah. That's the thing. So I'll give them two options. I'll say, okay, this is what your house will sell for as it sits today. And then other times I'll say, this is what it could sell for if you were to upgrade your kitchen or upgrade your bathroom. And so that gives them two options. And that way they can get a quote from a contractor to see if it's even feasible or makes sense for them to spend the time off the market, making repairs or making upgrades and then putting it back on. Sometimes it's not worth it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could just be changing the floors and painting.
Yeah.
Something that simple.
Yeah, you see that a lot. And the reason this conversation is very pertinent right now is because new listings are up over the last few years. And so we looked at a really cool chart this morning that showed where our inventory levels are based off of the last several years. And actually, over the last 3 years, we've consistently gone up. So in March of 2024, this is a national average here, but nationally in March of 24, there was 395,000 listings that were active on the market. And today in 2025 March, there is 435, almost 436,000 listings that are now active. So this is a great sign for us because it's showing that, we're starting to get a little bit more inventory, potentially maybe head into a more neutral market.
Yeah.
And we were talking about what the market was like back in 2019. And that was right when I got in the business. And I remember one of my very first transactions here in Frederick was, there was it was still technically a seller's market, but it was nothing like what it was the last several years. And I helped a young couple get into a townhome, $15K under list price, and also got them some seller help. So we're hoping that with this inventory increase that we're going to be able to help some more of our buyers, the ones that need a little bit more TLC or need some help with whether it be cash to close or getting a discount on a property.
Right.
I think that we're heading in that direction.
Right. And according to KCM, we do KCM studies in our office, right? We take their data and share it with our clients.
Yep.
This continued rise in active inventory is in part due to less active buyers. Mm-hmm. So with more choices available, buyers can afford to be more selective, putting a little pressure on sellers to price their homes competitively.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is where a true good CMA done by your realtor helps you in getting that price done right.
Absolutely. And don't get it twisted. I mean, it is still a seller's market out there. We're not in a neutral market yet because the real reason, like Louis just said, the real reason why these homes are sitting just a little bit longer is because money is so expensive. And, but we talk about it almost every week. But if those interest rates come back down to anywhere near a 5% mark, you're going to see so many people come out of the woodwork back into the market and push these home prices up even further. I really like it just because of the pure fact that, I remember the market before it was insane. And it was nice to be able to go out and take some buyers out and them find a property pretty quickly and have some options to actually go and see and then make a good deal that they feel good about,
right?
Yeah. In March, a typical home for sale spent 53 days on the market, 3 days longer than this same time last year. This marks the 12th consecutive month where homes have taken longer to sell compared to the year before. However, homes are still moving faster than they did before the pandemic, with days on market 9 days shorter than the March 2017-2019 average. So they're still taking a little bit longer to sell.
But they are selling.
They are eventually selling, yes.
And that's been the big thing is having those expectation conversations with our sellers, like, you know, looking in their zip codes and knowing how long from marketing period to contract, and then knowing where we stand in that period. So if for some reason in this specific zip code it takes the average listing to 14 days to go under contract, when we're sitting at 28 days, that's the market telling us something, and we have to pay attention to that.
Now that spring is here, it definitely is picking up.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about selling your house, you should definitely call a realtor. Yeah. You can call us, right?
Yep.
And get a comparative market analysis done.
Yep.
So that you have the tools you need in order to price your house correctly.
Yep. And one of the things too that we like doing is if you can give us an idea of what your payoff is on your property, we're going to build you a net sheet so you can truly see what you're going to walk away with at the end of the sale. And that's going to be after transfer tax, recordation tax, commissions, any title fees, all those things. And then you can make a clear decision on if selling is a good time for you right now. Because it might not be. You know, you may have bought too recently, or maybe there hasn't been enough action in your neighborhood to justify, you know, a certain price that you may need to hit, or whether you have a payoff that you need to hit, or a certain amount of money to walk away with in order to, you know, make that next purchase make sense.
It gives you an idea of like where you are, you know, so that you can make a better decision on if you're ready or, you know.
Yeah. Are you going to have the sufficient funds to buy the next house?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And that's where it usually starts. Like, you know, I've had so many sellers that were just kind of messing around with the idea, and then they see that bottom number and they're like, wait, I'm going to walk away with this? And then they're like, okay, I'm interested now. You know what I mean?
Like the client you just...
You
sent that client that CMA, and now they're back on the...
They're back on. They said, I sent that over to them, and they instantly replied, and they said, hey, thank you so much for that information. And they were like, hey, this house is too much for us. We definitely want to sell within the next year. So it's just nice to go back through. And if you have a realtor and they're not sending you that information, then...
Call us.
Because that's one thing that we like to do well after the sale too. You know, I know that based on, we have a database of all of our clients, both previous clients and maybe future clients that we're trying to work with. But once you've closed on a property with us, you don't just kind of go to the wayside. We keep you in the forefront of our minds. And also we're keeping you updated with your own market reports every year as we go on so that you could see, because I know that the average person doesn't stay in their home for more than their first home for more than what was it?
5 years.
5 years.
5 years, right.
So
my motto is realtor for life. I don't go away right after you close on your house.
Right.
I will keep in contact with you, ask you if you have any problems with your house, how you're doing, and then I offer them, hey, if you need any assistance in painting your house, changing floors, need a handyman, give me a call. We have the people to do it.
All right, so over the next couple of weeks, we have some really special guests coming on here. We're going to have a couple different builders, and you will see we're not going to give away our secrets just yet. We also have on a property management company who we are partnered with, and I think you guys are really going to like what he has to say. And we're going to talk a lot about, on the investor side of things, what we do to help our investors find a property, and not only that, but potentially manage it after the fact. We have a lot of stuff coming up, and we're really excited for you guys to hop on and talk with us. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments, and if not, we're going to see you next week.
Remember, CMAs are important.
CMAs are important.
If you're selling, call a realtor, have them do a comparative market analysis for you so that you can price your home right.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
You enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.